outdated. Stanley, Fahrenheit 451 is more relevant today than ever.
All right, let's dive into this one. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. I mean, firemen starting fires.
Yeah.
Books outlawed.
Yeah. It's a pretty intense concept, right? But it's crazy how, I mean, this was written back in 53 and how relevant it still feels today.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Bradbury, he really hit on some timeless themes. Those dangers of censorship and, you know, how attractive those easy distractions can be. It's something that we're really seeing a lot of today, would you say?
Yeah. So in this future America, books are like public enemy number one. What exactly happened? How did we get to that point? What's life like for people living in that world?
Well, it's not like a sudden takeover, you know, it's this gradual shift.
Okay.
Bradbury kind of hints that, you know, people wanting quick visual entertainment over, you know, really digging deep into a book.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. Sound familiar. Yeah. So these people in Fahrenheit 451, they're just constantly bombarded, like sensory overload, glued to these huge interactive TV screens, you know, the ones that take up like the whole wall. Critical thinking, forget about it.
Yeah.
It's all replaced by, you know, kind of mindless entertainment and, you know, the information the government wants them to have.
It's pretty wild how Bradbury predicted this whole information overload thing way before the internet.
Right.
Makes you think, are we headed down that road? Losing our ability to, I don't know, really focus, think critically, like engage with these complex ideas.
It's something to think about. And it's even more interesting when you bring in the main character, Guy Montag. He's a fireman.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, the guy whose job is to burn books.
There's definitely some internal conflict.
Yeah.
So Montag, I mean, he starts off totally believing in the system, right?
Right.
And then he meets Clarice McClellan,
Yes.
this young woman who's curious, wants to learn things.
Full of questions.
And she introduces him to like a whole world outside of those screens, right?
Yeah.
And it sparks this curiosity, you know, sends him down a dangerous path.
Bradbury's writing is brilliant there. He doesn't just hit you over the head with his message, right? He lets you see it. You know, these subtle changes as Montag starts to see things differently. That scene that always gets me is when Montag sees that old woman who'd rather die with her books than live without them.
Oh man, that is heartbreaking. But it really does make you think about how powerful ideas are. I mean, she was willing to die for them.
Right, and for Montag, that's when everything changes.
Yeah.
Her defiance makes him question everything he thought he knew and puts him on this path to, like, clashing with the very system he's a part of.
And the fire itself, it's more than just, you know, destruction. It's like this symbol. It's like Bradbury uses fire to represent all sorts of things, right?
Exactly. Fire represents how knowledge is being suppressed, how dissenting voices are silenced, but there's also this potential for rebirth, you know, like how fire can cleanse things, make way for new growth.
Interesting. It's like two sides of the same coin. Speaking of fire, there's Captain Beatty.
The fire chief.
He's complex, right? He gets the appeal of books, but then he's also destroying them.
He embodies the contradictions of the whole system.
Okay.
He reads, quotes literature, but then he chooses to uphold the system that's afraid of knowledge. Beatty really makes you think, is it worse to understand what you're destroying or to just blindly follow orders?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Makes you think about the compromises we make. But Bradbury also gives us hope, right? With those book people.
Yes. That group who decided to preserve knowledge by literally memorizing entire books, they are like walking libraries. They're protecting the ideas the government wants to wipe out. Imagine the commitment, the sheer willpower.
That's amazing. Makes you wonder, if books were outlawed today, what would we do to protect them? You know, what knowledge would we fight for?
That's a question for all of us. And it leads us to one of the most important things Fahrenheit 451 talks about, the power of resistance. The book people, they're not just holding on to the past. They're fighting back against, you know, the government controlling information. And they're not the only ones doing it. Look at what's happening today. All the stuff to protect information online, you know, archiving digital data, fighting censorship on social media. It's like a modern version of those book people, right? Trying to make sure that we hear all those different voices and ideas.
It's crazy, you know, when you put it that way. Fahrenheit 451,
Right.
It doesn't feel like some old warning anymore. It's like it's happening now, right?
Yeah. And Bradbury's novel gives us this way to understand it all. Like, it makes us ask ourselves, what are we doing to push back against those people who want to limit what we can learn? Are we just accepting what they're feeding us? Or are we looking for other perspectives and, you know, challenging the status quo?
Those are some big questions. Where do we even start? I mean, there's just so much information out there. How do we know what's real, what's not?
Right. It can be overwhelming. But one thing we can learn from Fahrenheit 451 is to think critically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't just take things at face value. Even if it's coming from someone you trust, question it. Look for different viewpoints and be open to changing your mind when there's new evidence. It's like training your brain to be a detective.
I like that, being a detective.
Always looking for clues and trying to figure out the whole picture.
It makes it sound less scary, and more like a challenge. But, to be a good detective, you need access to all the information.
Right.
Right. And that's getting harder in our world, isn't it?
It is. Think about those book bans happening in schools and libraries all over. Those people pushing for them, they say it's to protect kids from, harmful stuff, but it feels like they're trying to control what young people see and think.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to create Fahrenheit 451 in real life.
Yeah.
Certain ideas are just too dangerous. Like, what are they so afraid of?
I think they're afraid of knowledge, the power of it. They're afraid of people thinking for themselves. They're afraid of young people questioning things, rocking the boat. They know that books can open minds, show people new ways of thinking, and make people want to change things. And if you want to stay in control, that's scary.
It's kind of freaky how the stuff in Fahrenheit 451 is happening now. It makes the whole message of resisting, even more important, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. We can't just sit back and watch. We have to fight for knowledge, for freedom of thought. We have to fight for a future where books aren't banned and ideas aren't shut down.
Okay, but what can we actually do? It's easy to feel helpless with these big problems.
It's true, these are big systemic problems, but that doesn't mean individuals can't do anything. There's tons of ways to get involved, even small things. Support your library. Speak out against censorship. Try to understand viewpoints that are different from yours. Encourage your family, your community to think critically. Every little thing adds up.
It's like that saying, right? Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. It's from Margaret Mead.
That's so true. And Fahrenheit 451 shows that individuals can make a difference. Montag, he goes from being a fireman, just following orders, to being someone who fights for books. It shows that even when things seem really bad, one person standing up for what they believe in can change everything.
It's like that one candle that lights 1,000 others. Speaking of light, going back to the fire thing for a second, it's about destroying knowledge, but you said something about rebirth too, right? How does that fit into the story?
It's throughout the whole book. Fire burns books. It's a way to stop people from thinking. But then there's the book people gathering around bonfires, sharing stories, keeping those ideas alive. And in the end, when the city is destroyed in the war, fire becomes this, cleansing thing, making way for a fresh start.
I never thought of it that way. Fire is way more complicated than I thought. It's both destructive and also about new beginnings.
Exactly. That's what we can learn from Fahrenheit 451. We need to recognize those things that want to shut down knowledge, those distractions that keep us from thinking. But we also need to remember we have the power to fight back, to choose to learn, to connect with people who have the same values, and work together to make things better.
That's actually really helpful.
It is. And while Fahrenheit 451 shows us this, pretty dark future where knowledge is banned, it also gives us hope. It reminds us that people are strong, that ideas stick around even when things are tough, and that we all have a part to play in creating a world where knowledge is important, freedom is protected, and people can thrive.
Those are really powerful ideas. But I'm still wondering, how do we actually put those ideas into action? What can we do in our own lives to make a difference?
It's true, It's easy to kind of get swept up in all the noise, the information, the entertainment, and you just lose yourself in it all. But Fahrenheit 451, it reminds us that we have a choice. We can just go along with it, just be passive, or we can be involved, engaged, actually shaping the world.
And it's not just about what we take in. It's about who we connect with. Like those book people. They weren't just, memorizing books, right?
Yeah.
They built this whole community, this resistance network. It all came down to their shared values, their love of knowledge.
Right, that's so important. We need those connections in our own lives, those communities, places where we can challenge each other, support each other, and actually work together to make things better.
It makes me think about all the book clubs, discussion groups, even online forums, people getting together, talking about ideas, sharing their points of view, learning from each other.
Exactly. Those are the places where you break out of your bubble, hear new things, and really sharpen your critical thinking skills.
It's funny. We've been talking about Fahrenheit 451, like it's a warning.
Yeah.
But, I also kind of see it as a story about hope. In the end, even though the city is destroyed, The book people, they're still there. They have all that knowledge from the past, and they're ready to build something better.
Yeah, I agree. It shows us that even when things are really bad, the human spirit, it finds a way. And knowledge, imagination, connecting with each other, those things can help us get through anything.
So, if you could pick one thing you want our listeners to take away from, this deep dive into Fahrenheit 451, what would it be?
I hope they realize they can make a difference. That even small acts of resistance, like, I don't know, reading a book that challenges you, having a real conversation, connecting with people who share your values, that can make a difference. It can lead to a more informed, more engaged, a more hopeful future.
That's a great way to put it. And I hope people, pick up Fahrenheit 451 again, give it a read. It's such a powerful, relevant book. It has a lot to teach us about our world and the choices we make every single day. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and keep those conversations going.
Outdated. Stanley, Fahrenheit 451 is more relevant today than ever.